Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legionaries of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 175. We're covering Gravissimus Educationis, paragraph 3 on families and others in education. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican and frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday we spoke about how Christian education strives for a deeper maturation and transformation of the person. And today we are moving on to the next section, and the title of that section is The Authors of Education. I don't know if authors is the best word, but it's like the authorities, the ones who have both the responsibility, the duty or responsibility and the right to education. And then the summary is the parents are the primary educators of their children, but society and the church also have a role. So the parents aren't the sole educators of the children, right? So like they learn, even if you want to be like the most homeschool parents where you teach your kids everything, you still need things like, hey, you go to mass, and we learn from the mass itself through the church there. So that is the truth, the idea of all of these. So let's read paragraph 3. The 3 sections, subparagraphs. A, parents are the primary educators have a primary obligation to educate children. The family is a great environment for that. B, society also has a duty to educate children. And C, the church has a duty to educate. There we go. Pretty straightforward. So let's read 3A. Since parents have given their children life, they are bound by the most serious obligation to educate their offspring and therefore must be recognized as the primary and principal educators. This role in education is so important that only with difficulty can it be supplied where it is lacking. Parents are the ones who must create a family atmosphere, animated by love and respect for God and man, in which the well-rounded personal and social education of children is fostered. Hence, the family is the first school of the social virtues that every society needs. It is particularly in the Christian family, enriched by grace and the office of the sacrament of matrimony, that children should be taught from the very early to have knowledge of God according to the faith received in baptism, to worship Him and to love their neighbor. Here, too, they find their first experience of a wholesome human society and of the church. Finally, it is through the family that they are gradually led to a companionship with their fellow men and with the people of God. Let parents, then, recognize the inestimable importance of a truly Christian family has for the life and progress of God's own people. So to think about this, I think it's important to start with the idea of the sacrament of marriage. And Gaudium et Spes, which we'll deal with later in the year, one of the documents, speaks about this in the Catechism in 1652, quotes it. And so I'll read it here. By its very nature, the institution of marriage and married love is ordered to the procreation and education of offspring, and it is in them that it finds its crowning glory. So education is right there in the definition of the primary goal of marriage, right? So that idea of bringing forth children, there's also companionship goals of marriage and things like that. But this is one of the primary goals of marriage, if not the primary goal, is the procreation and education of children. And it includes that education of children, not just the procreation. And so parents have rights and duties with regard to this, because this is like part of the whole purpose of marriage. It's kind of important that you teach your kids, and it's not just teaching them ABCs and things like that, but teaching them virtues, teaching them proper ways to behave and things like that. So, and it's hard to replace, as parents are so intimately connected. Children have a right to their parents. They have a right to be brought up by their parents to the degree that's possible. Obviously, there's situations where adoption is needed because the parents are involved in problematic things or they're too young or things like that, and that's fine. But we should not separate children from their parents without super importance, right? We need to make sure that they are that we give the parents the best if possible, and that's why divorce is bad, but also why, for example, I was talking to a young I don't know if she's young now, young middle-aged woman, and she worked for social services, and her job was to make sure with these parents who were having trouble and they might get their parental rights taken away, try and work with them so they could then keep their parental rights and keep their kids. That is a good thing that society does that we don't just say, oh, you're not doing a good job as a parent, we're going to take your kids. No, but there is a degree where the society can take the kids if the parents are neglectful or abusive or things like that. And parents create that family atmosphere, which is educational. The atmosphere itself is educational. The idea that you have all the books to read, that you have all the Legos, that you have even the idea of how the parents show love, how the parents discipline when the kids misbehave, things like that. All of those are educational. How we deal with others, how we communicate, how we deal with interpersonal struggles where both you and your sister both want to play with the same toy at the same time. Well, how do you deal with that? Your parents have probably taught you, and you probably still use something of what you learned from your parents, assuming it's good. And you maybe if it was really bad, you might have had to go through therapy and develop different strategies. But like for myself, I still use a lot of like those type of things in interpersonal dealings today. And it is that first wholesome, human society, and it leads them out to the larger society. And they teach love of God and man. And ultimately, the grace of the sacraments elevate this. And the children receive this in their sacraments. But just before I'm recording this, a few days ago, my oldest nephew was confirmed, right? He was confirmed by the bishop there and everything. And that's wonderful. It's wonderful that he got that confirmation, that now he's received that sacrament and things like that. And that is great. That is grace building on nature. There is marriage as a sacrament, the sacrament that the kids receive, especially the 3 sacraments of initiation, baptism, confirmation, and First Communion, and the sacrament of healing of confession or reconciliation, whichever word you want to use. And so it is so formative for the parents to think of how they raise their children and their families. Now, obviously, as primary educators, they have the right, if they want to homeschool as well and things like that. And this number is not really foreseeing homeschool because it doesn't mention it here, but it would imply it. But the family teaches kids so much beyond what we sometimes think of, because it doesn't teach you so much of, physics or things like that. Now, moving on to 3B, society has a duty to educate children. Let's read it. The family, which has the primary duty of imparting education, needs the help of the whole community. In addition, therefore, the rights of parents and others to whom parents entrust a share of their work and education. Certain rights and duty belong indeed to civil society, whose role is to direct what is required for the common temporal good. Its function is to promote the education of youth in many ways, namely protect duties and rights of parents and others who share in education and give them aid, according to the principle of subsidiarity. When the endeavors of parents and other societies are lacking to carry out the work of education in accordance to the wishes of parents, and moreover, as the common good demands, to build schools and institutions. We should mention here what subsidiarity means. It's a principle of Catholic social doctrine, which the lowest level of authority which can practically do something should be given to do it. So that's the idea that we don't necessarily need all national standards for everything. And it's not that it's necessarily bad that you might have national standards or state standards. I know when I was going, like you have the SAT in the U.S., when I was going through school in grade 12, half of our grade was based on a final, and all the students in the province got the same final exam, and that was half of your grade 12 grade. Senior year of high school for Americans we never called it that in Canada, we just used the numbers. But anyways, and that was just how your grade was there. And so that's not wrong because it kind of gives a standard, but at the same time, that subsidiarity for parents to decide how to put it, it's promoting things like vouchers or parents choosing other types of school, like Catholic schools and things like that. And this idea is also that we have here is that society and those overseeing education have certain rights and duties. If you leave your students to my sister, who is a teacher, and she's taking care of them for the day, and she's teaching them, hopefully they learn whatever they're supposed to learn that day, whether it's like long division or whatever else, right? And that's a good thing if they learn that. And obviously that's helpful for everybody to have people who dedicate their lives to that. And that's not bad. That's a good thing. But the schools and the people in society need to direct towards the common good. And obviously we mentioned subsidiarity already, and then we need to build and organize schools, structure schools and things like that. But what I think is implied here, but it's not directly stated, is also the idea that the whole of society is educational in how it operates. The fact that we have speed limits, that once you're second grade, you can read the speed limits and you go, oh, I know how fast it is here. I know that number, and it says maximum, and I can read that, and things like that, right? And so we have Or we have a society where they learn that just dealing is right, and it's not a society where everybody just puts money under the table as bribes to get what they want. And those things are educational. How we structure our society teaches children how to live. And that's an important aspect of the societal part that's implied here. Finally, paragraph 3C, subparagraph 3C, is on the church and its duty to educate. Let's read it. Finally, in a special way, the duty of educating belongs to the church, not merely because she must be recognized as a human society capable of educating, but especially because she has the responsibility of announcing the way of salvation to all men, of communicating the life of Christ to those who believe, and her unfailing solicitude of assisting men to be able to come to the fullness of this life. The church is bound, as a mother, to give these children of hers an education, by which their whole life can be imbued with the Spirit of Christ, and at the same time to do all she can to provide for all peoples the complete perfection of the human person, the good of earthly society, and the building of a world that is more human. In general, in society, religion is an organizing principle. Not just the church, but in any society, what is most important is what you worship. That is the central aspect of society. And so that is the central thing of society. And the church is that. She also is society. She brings society into that life beyond, into that life to come. She announces salvation to all men. So here we have this idea of the society, this going forth, this organizing principle, but also the church's mother. She cares for her children. She cares even for those who are not her children. She cares in a way because she is the mother of all the church, not just the explicitly Catholic members, but she wants to promote perfection, promote good for all members of human society, not just Catholics. And so that is another aspect that she really wants to promote there. That's all for today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can donate to help StarQuest produce it. Another great podcast at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow we're going to continue the next paragraphs in Gravissimus Educationes on 4 to 5, which is on schools are important and need help. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which provides a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan. There's also a Discord for SQPN at sqpn.com/Discord. On there, there's a channel for Vatican II in a Year. Amen.